Is the government misleading you right now about buying Bitcoin? Because everybody is so hyped up about the US government having a crypto reserve and buying Bitcoin. But what if that's not true at all? What if they're actually misleading you? And that's what I want to talk about today, about the truth of what could happen in the following weeks to months with the Bitcoin market. And so, as we go ahead and start, just know that by the end of the video, we'll talk about and break down what could actually happen. Are they going to actually have a Bitcoin reserve and will it actually matter? It's a big deal because there's a crypto summit tomorrow, and we'll go ahead and break down potentially what could happen. Now, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, what I want you to do right now, I want you to stop what you're doing, go to the subscribe button right in front of you underneath where it says Rager Crypto, click subscribe, and make sure to turn on notifications because I am giving updates daily now. Now, every week at least, but for the most part, I've been doing it daily and I've been in the crypto market for about a decade, longer than most people on YouTube have been on here, but I just haven't really made any videos. I'm starting to make videos now breaking down crypto and Bitcoin. I've been successful, and I think that there's a lot of success to come in the crypto market. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Super easy. It used to be a red button. Now it's a white button. Click subscribe. It's right there. Stop what you're doing and do it. And then we'll go ahead and get into the video and do some fact checking here. Now, Bitcoin currently, if you're watching this, it's at $91,000, right? It's done well even after the pullback from the past couple of months. We had a nice bounce. Of course, we hit a high of 109K, bounced or bled down to about 78K, and we've since bounced, came back down, and we're really just moving sideways, okay? And there's a lot of chop in the market, and really what people, I think, in general, they're waiting on the sides to determine what is going to happen in the next weeks to months. We've got a lot going on. We do know that, as I've talked about earlier, the Fed could potentially cut rates this March, or they could wait until May or June. And of course, if they cut rates, typically that's going to be risk on for some of these assets such as Bitcoin and crypto, and more people should get in, of course, increasing the price if that happens. So I want to go ahead and break down what's being said about the government and if they're really truly misleading people. Now, when I say the government, I'm really talking about the tweets in from President Trump. And so what we saw the other day was Donald Trump talk about a US crypto reserve, how it'll elevate and be critical for the industry in an executive order for digital assets, and how they plan to have a crypto strategic reserve that includes XRP, Solana, Cardano, and of course, later on, they talk about Ethereum and Bitcoin because they left those out. But these specific assets they discussed as far as having a crypto strategic reserve. And what does that even mean, right? When you have a strategic reserve, it means that the government actually holds the assets. Okay. So we actually hold gold. I'll get into that, excuse me, as far as what that means. But has the US government actually held Bitcoin before? Yes, but not how you think. If you did not know this, David Sachs today actually wrote over the past decade, the federal government sold approximately 195,000 Bitcoins for proceeds of $366 million. That's a lot of money. But if the government had held the Bitcoin, it would be worth $17 billion today. That's a huge number compared to 366 million, right? So we're talking about 3 times 17, 50x roughly, as far as that goes. So that's how much it has cost American taxpayers not having a long-term strategy. So what we know is that, yes, the government has had Bitcoin before, but they actually haven't held it for long. What has happened is they got Bitcoin that they had seized over time, right? From whether it's Silk Road or other types of illegal incidences where they could actually seize that Bitcoin like any asset that the government will do at times, and then they sell it off for a profit. So the US government actually has never been a Bitcoin buyer. And that's the big deal that we're getting to because everybody thinks that the government is going to start buying Bitcoin. But let's go on and talk about what the government actually means when they say crypto reserve, because this is what I want to tell you right now. If you're bullish on this, you need to understand that Senator Loomis, this is on Cointelegraph, Senator, the US Bitcoin Reserve lacks support. So, data from Cointelegraph Markets Pro, TradingView, blah, 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 blah. Basically, they're showing volatility in Bitcoin, as we just talked about earlier. But if we go ahead and scroll down, Wyoming Senator Cynthia Loomis, and so that she's the author of the Bitcoin Reserve Bill, not acknowledge that there was a lack of congressional support for the idea of a Bitcoin and crypto reserve for the United States government. Okay. Quote, proponents might need to put a pin for a little while in the Bitcoin strategic reserve because we're not there yet, paraphrasing Tim Scott, chairman of the House Banking Committee, quoted by mainstream media. And of course, they go on to say it's not if, but when they do it. And other people say it's going to happen. But the whole point being is that you have to have everybody on board. When it comes to the government, it has to go through election, through voting process. Everybody has to, or the majority have to be on board. And it just seems like not everybody's there yet. Even Tim Scott says that. And I believe that he's a Republican. And so you even have people who are in the Republican Party who have majority of the votes in the government who aren't even on board yet. And how are you supposed to have an actual crypto reserve if you don't have full support of the government? Not to mention the United States citizens. A lot of people don't even know about Bitcoin and crypto yet. They're super skeptical because all of the scams that are involved. As you look at that, you have to understand this will take time, even if it's done. So we've got this huge crypto summit tomorrow. There's no way that they can go ahead and say, we're going to start buying Bitcoin. Now, they can say that, but you have to have the backing from other people. It just can't be Donald Trump saying, we're going to do this. It's not a dictatorship, right? The US government is run by many people, representatives in Congress. And I've even said on Twitter, if you're not following me, go over to Twitter right now at Rager. But I said, hey, I'm skeptical. As far as Bitcoin, the government has only seized Bitcoin and sold it instead of holding it. Will they really switch from solely seizing Bitcoin to buying Bitcoin? We talk about strategic Bitcoin reserve, how much it'll impact. Will it truly have on the market over time? And especially if the government agrees to just stop selling seized Bitcoin instead of actually buying it. There is hope, though, because as the government does hold gold, and if there can be a new Bitcoin is digital gold change of thinking, then that could indeed influence the government to buy Bitcoin, and that could be huge. But, as of right now, I am skeptical. And let's go ahead. We'll talk about that here in a minute as far as gold goes. But I even say this, and don't even start me on the government buying altcoins for a reserve, right? They don't even buy stock as investments because we noticed that XRP, Solana, Cardano were all mentioned in the crypto strategic reserve. But why would they all of a sudden start buying Cardano and Solana and altcoins for reserve assets that aren't even that old? These aren't even 5 years old or close to it when there are stocks with a proven long-term track record that have been around so much longer. So does the US buy assets? They don't even buy stocks, okay? There have been very few instances where the US government has bought long-term proven track record stocks, and that was like the 2008 financial crisis, right? The government bailed out banks, automakers, GM, Chrysler, and temporarily owned stocks before selling it back, right? But they did sell it back, but they did buy those for a short amount of time. You had COVID-19 in 2020, the Federal Reserve, they bought corporate bonds to stabilize markets. The whole key takeaway is this, is that the government only buys assets when they have to prevent a collapse, not a long-term investment. And so they don't buy stocks with a proven track record. Why would they buy these altcoins, right? Now, Bitcoin, we can get a little bit more back that up, right? Because it's been around the longest as far as a digital asset goes, proven track record. We'll look at that here in a minute because I want to compare that to gold. But bottom line, a lot of these altcoins, they're not even, they're still having inflationary terms where teams own them, where other funds and investors own them. They can dump them on the market and crash the prices. They're super volatile. They're high beta Bitcoin, meaning that the price goes up and down a lot more in compared to Bitcoins. With the actual US government holding that and impacting taxpayers and everybody in the United States, that would be a very high risk thing to do. I don't foresee the government actually holding or buying, excuse me, altcoins. But what could happen is Mark here on Twitter also posted very similar, saying that he's very skeptical as well as far as the government going and buying a ton of Bitcoin and crypto coins. What appears more likely to happen is that the US government cuts any tentative future plans to liquidate their existing BTC holdings. As we said earlier, they seize Bitcoin, they sell that off. If they seize it in the future, they're going to hold that long term as a strategic reserve. Now, in regards of the other altcoins listed on the reserve status, I think that they will even be a harder sell for Congress. And of course they will. Why is Congress, as I just said, going to want to buy altcoins? But think of it as this, that the projects Cardano, XRP, Solana may allocate free tokens to the reserve as in a grant type of way. So that's a little bit different. So if these teams of Cardano and Solana and Ripple, and they have large amount, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of these tokens, and they want to actually give those as a grant for I don't know why, but hope maybe in hopes that more people buy those, that they get the attention from the US government. But that could potentially happen. But I don't see the actual government doing that. So as far as the prior tweets that we've seen from President Trump, it definitely feels we're being misled. And I say maybe lied to, but really misled of what's going to happen in the coming weeks and months, especially at the crypto summit and what the government is going to actually decide to do with crypto tokens. So now the most bullish case that we can think of, as I said earlier, is that the hope is that that the government thinks of Bitcoin as digital gold. Okay. And so when you think of gold, the government actually does hold gold, right? That's one of the assets. We know that they hold real estate with all the national parks, they hold gold. That's a big deal as far as thinking Bitcoin as digital gold. So that would be the one way that the US could justify actually buying Bitcoin to hold in reserve long term. And the good thing about this is that Bitcoin's scarce, right? We know that there's only 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever exist, just like gold is finite. It's proven store of value. Over the last decade, Bitcoin has outperformed every asset class, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. It's a hedge against inflation, right? Governments print money, but Bitcoin can't be inflated. If you look at the gold chart, pretty stable overall. And that's the beauty of gold is we have seen it go up in value over time because people do fear about the current economic status of the dollar and fiat currencies, and they go to gold as a hedge, as an emergency. And it's went up even to around, it's not quite doubled since 2022, but it's went from $1,600 per ounce to close to 3,000, which is its highest ever. But over the course of the last decade, we've only seen it go up 3x, okay, since 2008. Now, if you look at Bitcoin and you're thinking of, when you think of a reserved, something that's like digital, that's like gold, Bitcoin, we've seen it from 2010 go from 10 cents to $91,000, okay? So this has been just really shown to be a store of value. Now, in between, in these cycles that we've had every 4 years or so, you've seen Bitcoin pull back around 80%, sometimes 90% plus. We've seen that every 4 years. Last time we hit 69, 70,000, went down to 15,000, back up to 90,000, a new high. Will we dip down another 80% from the high? I think as we've seen adoption over time, that Bitcoin will become less volatile. As more people hold it, as more people store it, there will be less, it'll be very scarce, but I think overall we'll see the volatility continue to decrease where maybe instead of 80% massive pullbacks during these cycles, we'll see more like 40 to 50% max drawdown. But the key is knowing this on the chart long term, it continues to make higher highs and higher lows to where this can continue on to where it's potentially in the seven figures in the future. And that's the bullish case for Bitcoin as a reserve asset, even more than gold, for the fact that gold has only went 3x in the last decade and Bitcoin is up millions of percent. Now, that can't sustain naturally every 4 years. The return of investment, if you buy at the lows and sell at the highs, gets less and less every year. But the whole point being is that this just continues to go up in value. And really, how high can gold get in value? It's already at $3,000 per ounce. So can it get much higher? And will it take decades for it to go up another 2x from here? Bitcoin potentially can be up a lot more in that time. So that is the main reason we want to look at Bitcoin as a strategic store of value for a reserve, like gold, because it has a proven track record over a decade of price going up and sustaining, even though there are pullbacks overall. But this is the big thing. There's a harsh truth and reality to the crypto and Bitcoin reserve. I don't foresee us holding XRP Solana in Cardano or buying it only if we get it through grants from the team. That's the first thing. Are we going to actually buy Bitcoin? Probably not yet, but there is less selling pressure if the government decides to stop liquidating the seized assets of Bitcoin that it gets over time. That would be huge. I think the next thing is to think about actually switching that for Congress, right? As we saw earlier, that they don't have the support needed to push this through, but can Congress and government officials and politicians eventually change their mind and see Bitcoin as it does gold as a long-term hedge to the dollar, as something that would be good and stable as a reserve asset that has value like digital gold, right? So those are the things that we want to actually recognize and talk about and know that's probably the direction that we're going as far as the US government goes with Bitcoin, not necessarily buying it, at least not yet. That's what we wanted to look at today. Know that we have the crypto summit for the White House coming up. That's going to be a big deal. Make sure that you continue to watch the channel. I will give you an update on what is said at the summit, break that down, and we talk about the importance of what's to come in crypto, in Bitcoin. And just remember, if you've not yet subscribed to the channel, make sure you go and you do that right now. Click that button because I am having giveaways for subscribers that comment on the video. Make sure that you comment below. I'm going to give away some Bitcoin over time each week to a subscriber that actually comments on the video. I don't care what you say. Hey, that was a great video. So that was a lousy video. I don't care what you say. Just engage. And I love to see that community build over time. So with that said, I am Rager. You are watching Rager Crypto. Make sure to subscribe. I will give you more updates to come on Bitcoin in the Crypto Summit as we go. But just know that exciting times ahead, even though that this is not perhaps what people want to hear as far as the government buying Bitcoin, it is a positive direction in crypto. So with that said, you guys trade safe and I'll talk to you soon.